Hello, my name is Tanya Tititaha and I'm the member from the Employment Relations Authority presiding on this case today. Now this is an application brought by Mr Pink alleging unjustified dismissal by Ms Cabot. Now to get things started, can each of the parties please introduce themselves and tell me what your particular role is today? Let's start with Mr Pink.
Hello, my name is Mr Ken Pink and I'm the applicant.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Linka. I'm the representative for Mr Pink today.
Hello, my name is Miss Edie Cabot and I'm the respondent.
My name is Mike and I represent Miss Cabot today.
Hello, I'm Linda and I'm here to support Ken Pink today.
Right, thank you and nice to meet you. All right. Now from the documents I've received, I understand the issue we're dealing with today is whether Mr Pink was unjustifiably dismissed and whether he's entitled to an award of remedies. Now can I first check with Mr Pink what remedies you're asking for today? I understand you're asking for 3 months' wages and damages for or compensation for hurt and humiliation you've experienced of around $5,000, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
The other issue I understand from the evidence is whether Mr Pink contributed in a blameworthy way to the circumstances leading to his dismissal. In other words, did you do something which caused the personal grievance to occur? So the issues, in summary, that we're dealing with today is A, whether Ms Cabot's actions in dismissing Mr Pink were what a fair and reasonable employer could have done in all the circumstances. B, if I find that's not the case, whether Mr Pink has taken reasonable steps to mitigate any losses consequent to his dismissal. What I mean there is whether you've got another job within the claim period and what wages you earned. And C, in relation to the remedies sought, whether Mr Pink has contributed in any way. Now, this matter's been allocated 3 hours hearing time today, and we should have sufficient time to finish this matter, but if not, a little bit more time can be allocated. We'll take breaks as we need them. Now, I've read the witness statements and documents which have been filed, and they'll form the basis of our discussions today. If there's anything you want to add to your witness statement, you can do so either prior to or during the questioning. But in terms of the program for the hearing, firstly I'll start questioning the witnesses, then I'll allow the parties to question the witnesses. Then I'll consider what you've said to me and I will give a decision thereafter. Now let's start with the order of witnesses. Is there any particular order the parties require? No? Okay, then we'll go with the normal order with the applicant who's bringing the case. Then I'll move across to the employer, Ms Cabot, who's responding to tell us why the remedies sought should or shouldn't be granted. Any problems with that order? No? Okay, well let's start with Mr Pink and we'll finish with Ms Cabot. Okay, Mr Pink, you have two options. One, you may either take an oath on the Bible or an affirmation. What would you prefer?
Affirmation, please.
Okay, could I ask you to raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly and sincerely affirm that the evidence you shall give touching on the matters now before the authority shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Now, I have a copy of the brief you filed in front of me. You've got a copy as well in front of you. Have you read through it?
I have.
Are there any changes or corrections to make to your brief?
No.
So everything in there is true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief. It's still the evidence you wish to give to me today?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's now sworn evidence and it'll come in on the report. So you're 40 years old, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you're a solo dad, I see.
Yes.
How many children have you got?
I've got 3, 2, 5 and 9.
So at the time of your dismissal, you were working for a Ms Edie Cabot, is that right?
Yes, I just started work on a shop fit out. It was for a new diamond store.
And when did you start working for Ms Cabot?
17th of June 2013.
Now, in the statement of problem, you say on the first day you worked for Ms Cabot, she spoke to you in the afternoon. Can you tell me what you talked about?
Yeah, Miss Cabot came to me and said that she wanted to speak to me. She took me outside. She said some diamonds were missing from the store. She said that someone had seen me take them. She asked me what I had to say to that. I told her that I'd been with Winston White. He's a workmate of mine.
And what did Ms Cabot say to you about that?
She told me to take my stuff and go. She said, just get out.
She just told you to leave, did she?
She said something about not being able to trust me anymore.
So she told you she couldn't trust you anymore. Did you understand what she meant by that?
No.
Did she give you an opportunity to speak to her further about that?
No, she just told me to go.
So you didn't tell her what you thought about the allegation she couldn't trust you?
No, she didn't give me any chance, and to be honest, I was too upset about it to really say much anyway.
Did you know that her concern was about some missing diamonds?
She said someone had seen me take them.
Did she tell you who that person was?
No.
Did you tell her you didn't take them?
I didn't say it in so many words because I was really upset and shocked, but I said that I'd been with Winston all the time.
Had you worked for Ms Cabot before?
No, that was my first day.
Now, in your brief of evidence, you say you signed an employment agreement, but you didn't have a copy of it. I understand Ms Cabot has a copy of your agreement and you've seen it, is that right?
Yes.
And is this copy like the one you signed?
Yes, it looks like it.
Now, you've got your own copy there of the employment agreement. I just want you to have a look at clause 24. Now, that clause of your employment agreement lists theft as an instance of serious misconduct, the penalty for which may be dismissal. Can you see that?
Yes.
Now, were the terms of your employment agreement referred to in your meeting with Ms Cabot?
No.
Well, tell me what you've done since your dismissal work-wise.
I've tried to get some jobs, but I haven't managed to get any yet.
Have you got any evidence of those jobs that you applied for?
No, not with me.
Let's go back to the events immediately before your dismissal. What did you think Ms Cabot was coming to see you about during the smoko break?
I didn't know until she started to talk to me.
And when she started to talk to you, what did you think?
It doesn't sound good. She said that there was some diamonds missing, and yeah, it didn't sound good.
Was there anyone else around at the time?
Yeah, the rest of the group was there.
Could they hear?
Yes.
Did Ms Cabot walk away with you to have this conversation?
Yes, she took me outside.
And could the others hear you at that point?
No.
Before your dismissal, were you given a chance to have a representative present?
No.
Before your dismissal, did Ms Cabot warn you dismissal might be an outcome of this process?
No.
In her statement, Ms Cabot noted that you left for 15 minutes before the smoko. Can you talk me through why you left and where you went?
I went to get a can of V.
Where'd you get your can of V?
Oh, down the road, down the shop.
Okay, all right, well thank you. If you could just remain there, Ms Cabot's representative may have some more questions for you.
Okay.
You say in your evidence that you were with Mr White at the site all through the day. However, you've just said to the member in reply to her question that you left the site to go down the road to buy a can of V. Was Mr White with you at that time?
No, he wasn't.
Were there other times you left Mr White during the day?
No, only at that time.
Okay. So when you told Ms Cabot you were with Mr White all day, that was wrong, wasn't it?
Yes.
Thank you, nothing more.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions and re-examination from Mr Pink's representative? All right, thank you. Ms Cabot, the procedure is now that I've got to require you to take an oath or an affirmation. You have those two options. You can swear on the Bible or you can take an affirmation. Which would you prefer?
Bible, please.
Can you please place your right hand on the Bible? Do you swear by Almighty God that the evidence you shall give touching upon these matters now before the authority shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right, thank you. Now, Ms Cabot, you filed a brief of evidence, is that right?
Yes.
You've got that in front of you?
Yes.
You read through it?
Yes.
Are there any changes or corrections you need to make to it?
Yes, I do have something I'd like to add.
All right, I'll ask your representative to lead that new evidence.
Why have you not called Mr White to give evidence today?
Unfortunately, he died shortly after Mr Pink's dismissal.
And tell me, Eddie, were the diamonds ever found?
Yes, they were found in a toilet cistern in the bathroom.
Thank you. That's all.
Ms Cabot, did you speak to Mr White on the day the diamonds were stolen?
Yes.
And did he indicate he'd worked with Mr Pink for the entire day with the exception of a 15-minute period?
Yes.
Did you see Mr Pink leave the premises that day?
No.
Did you speak to Mr Pink about what Mr White had said?
No, I didn't.
Did you ask Mr White what he was doing in the toilet?
No.
Can you explain why you dismissed Mr Pink without any further questioning of either him or Mr White?
Well, I thought I'd done enough. I mean, he lied to me about his whereabouts and he'd only been on the job one day.
So is it correct that you spoke to Mr Pink about the diamonds on the day of the incident after you'd spoken to Mr White about him leaving the premises?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell him did you tell him you thought he'd taken the diamonds?
Yes.
And how did he respond?
He didn't.
So why didn't you give him some time to think about your allegation that he may have taken the diamonds?
Well, I did, but he didn't respond. He just went red and said nothing else.
Did you ask Mr Pink if he wanted a support person or a legal representative present?
No, as I said, he'd only been on the job a day.
Before you made this decision to dismiss, did you tell him that might be the outcome of the process?
Well, I thought that would have been obvious.
Right, thank you, Ms Cabot. I've no further questions. I'll invite the applicant's representative to ask any questions.
Thank you. Ms Cabot, you said before in your evidence that you saw Mr White leave the toilets?
Yes.
And you also said that the diamonds were found in the toilets?
Yes.
Did you at any time see Mr Pink leave the toilets?
No, I didn't see him.
I'll refer you to your evidence where you stated that anyone who took the diamonds would have had blue-stained hands.
Yes.
At any time, did you examine Mr White's hands?
No.
At any time, did you examine Mr Pink's hands?
No.
I have no further questions for Ms Cabot.
Oh, thank you. Mike, do you have any questions in re-examination?
Nothing further, thanks.
Right, well, thank you both parties. So we'll take a short break of about 45 minutes, then I'll hear from both of you with your closing submissions. Okay, thank you all. Now you will have your opportunity to sum up your evidence and tell me your closing arguments in support of your respective parties' cases. The applicant is to go first, followed by the respondent, and then I'll give a short right of reply to the applicant to whatever the respondent has told me. So we'll start firstly with Mr Pink's representative, Linka.
Thank you. So starting with the key facts, I think it has been established before the authority that Mr Pink was employed as a labourer by Ms Cabot starting on the 17th of June 2013 to work. On the day in question, on the 17th of June 2013, he was approached by Ms Cabot when he was with his colleagues at a smoko. Ms Cabot understood that at that time the diamonds had been stolen. She then pulled Mr Pink away from his colleagues to his distress and had a private meeting with him, stating that he had stolen the diamonds and that he had to go. At no point did Mr Pink have an opportunity to respond to those allegations, and what was also clear from the evidence we heard from Ms Cabot is that she did no further investigation beyond speaking to Mr White. What we also heard today was that Mr White himself had also been in the toilet where the diamonds were found, and that neither Mr Pink nor Mr White had had their hands examined to see if there was any security dye on their hands. That raises the questions as to whether an adequate investigation was really carried out. As a result of this, we believe that a fair and reasonable process hasn't been followed in terms of Section 103A of the Employment Relations Act 2000, and Mr Pink was unjustifiably dismissed because in particular there was an insufficient investigation of the allegation by Ms Cabot, and there was no reasonable opportunity for Mr Pink to respond. I think it is quite clear that her actions caused significant humiliation to Mr Pink in front of his colleagues, and also taking into account Mr Pink's personal situation as stated in his evidence before the authority, that he is a single father who has been without an income for a long time as a consequence of Ms Cabot's unjustified dismissal. Turning to the respondent's evidence, she said that she did not trust Mr Pink and she could dismiss him. However, there was no reasonable basis for that mistrust apparent on the evidence. She did not examine the hands, she did not see Mr Pink come out of the toilet himself, where the diamonds were found, and he was not allowed an opportunity to respond to the allegations. As a result, I submit there is a strong case here for asking unpaid wages for 3 months for Mr Pink's dismissal and for a payment of a sum of $5,000 for his humiliation.
Thank you. Mike, can you present your closing submission?
Yes, in summary, the key facts are Mr Pink signed an employment agreement and was dismissed on 17 June 2013. On the same day, someone stole some diamonds. Ms Cabot asked Mr Pink about it. She took him outside and asked him what he knew about the diamonds, and he failed to use that opportunity to respond. In terms of the evidence presented today, Mr Pink said he was confronted about the issue in front of his colleagues. He was in fact taken aside and her concerns were put to him in private. In terms of the allegation, Ms Cabot clearly put her concerns to Mr Pink. He had an opportunity to respond to those and he failed to do so. We also heard inconsistencies in Mr Pink's evidence. He told Ms Cabot he was in Mr White's presence all of the day, and today he told the authority he was apart for 15 minutes, in which he alleges he was at a supermarket getting a can of V. There is no evidence to support that. He also confirmed here today he was in the bathroom where the diamonds were later found. I submit there is a question as to how honest Mr Pink has been with Ms Cabot in terms of what he was in fact doing that day. I submit Mr Pink was given a fair chance to respond to Ms Cabot's concerns and he failed to take that chance. In terms of humiliation, I submit there was no humiliation, and if there was, it is something he brought upon himself in not participating in the discussion fully with Ms Cabot. I finally submit that Mr Pink was justifiably dismissed. And note, in relation to the claim for lost wages, there is no evidence that Mr Pink has made a reasonable effort to find another job. And there's no shortage of labouring jobs. That's all.
Thank you for your closing remarks. You now have a right to respond, Linka.
Thank you. There is no evidence to support that the respondents claim that there are plenty of labouring jobs at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for your closing submissions. I'll take a short recess and we'll come back and do my decision. Mr Pink was employed for 1 day in a labouring job outfitting a diamond store. Ms Cabot dismissed him for stealing diamonds. He challenges his dismissal and seeks lost wages and compensation for hurt and humiliation and injury to feeling. The issues for me to decide are: 1, was Ms Cabot's decision to dismiss Mr Pink one a fair and reasonable employer could have done in all the circumstances? If not, whether Mr. Pink is entitled to his claim for lost remuneration. And thirdly, whether Mr. Pink contributed in a blameworthy way to the circumstances leading to his dismissal. Now, the law is well known. An employer must investigate concerns, raise those concerns with the employee, give the employee a reasonable opportunity to respond to the concerns, and then genuinely consider those concerns or that explanation prior to dismissal. Now, Ms. Cabot tells me the dismissal was justified because she gave Mr. Pink a fair chance to comment on the allegation, and he failed to provide one. Now, any procedural deficiency, she tells me, in this dismissal process should be balanced against the fact he was only employed for 1 day. Now, I find Mr. Pink was unjustifiably dismissed. I don't accept Ms. Cabot's arguments, and I explain that in the following way. I find the investigation was inadequate. Ms. Cabot failed to investigate key issues which were relevant to the allegation of theft, and of which she was quite well aware of before she reached the decision to dismiss. And these, of course, included Mr. Pink and Mr. White's hands being stained or not stained, and who they'd been in the toilets with and when. I also find the allegation was not fairly put to Mr. Pink, which denied him a reasonable opportunity to respond. Now, he was not told he could consult a representative or that a possible outcome of this process may be, in fact, dismissal. Those elements are fundamental to the obligations of a fair process. The duration of employment is irrelevant. Ms. Cabot had an obligation to act as a fair and reasonable employer prior to making any decision to dismiss. The allegation of theft is a serious one. It requires an employer to do more than what occurred in these particular circumstances. Ms. Cabot had the resources and time to ask more questions. She failed to do so. I now turn to Mr. Pink's claim for remedies. Mr. Pink is required to take steps to mitigate his losses. This includes reasonable efforts at finding alternative work. I'm not satisfied he has taken reasonable steps to mitigate his lost wages. I accept he's been out of work for 3 months, but without adequate evidence of steps he's taken to find another job, he has not made out his claim. I am, however, satisfied Mr. Pink was humiliated and hurt by this dismissal. I find that deficiencies in the dismissal process would have compounded those feelings, and I award him $5,000. There is an order pursuant to section 1231CI of the Employment Relations Act 2000 that Ms. Cabot paid to Mr. Pink the sum of $5,000. I also find that there was no contributory conduct requiring a reduction in any of the remedies. Thank you.